let's take a look at this exercise. इसमें हमने CL CDC 13 capture किया है. So I have taken 3 passages and all the 8 VA questions. One passage I found to be quite illogical. Couple of questions were absurd, so I have not taken it. The rest of the passages were okay. They were not difficult. They were rather easy to moderate. And barring 1 or 2 questions where I have my own doubts, rest were okay. So this was a much better mock in terms of VARC compared to the previous ones, wherein certain sections were totally ridiculous. In fact, last couple of mocks, if I think of, then I find that in both of them, the passages were not really very good in terms of logic. Questions had some problems and options had some problems. So here, it's quite okay compared to the last 2. So let's take a look at the first passage. Science has often carried the connotation of social progress. As early as the Enlightenment, philosophers, economists, and political thinkers sought to naturalize their theories and make them more rational, like the sciences. Social reformers sometimes sought to remove traditional forms of power in society, such as political or religious elites, and instead build a society on scientific principles. So how has science often conveyed the social progress, the idea of social progress? That as science has evolved, progress has been made. And Enlightenment happened in 16th, 17th century. So from that time onwards, these philosophers, economists, and political thinkers, they naturalize their theories, make them more rational. And the scientists, social reformers also tried to remove traditional forms of power, such as religious elites, political elites, and build a society based on scientific principles. No event did more to shatter the progressive spirit of science than World War I. The image of scientists working for the progress of civilization was difficult to reconcile with the destructive fruits of science and technology, machine guns, mass-produced explosives, and the new innovation of poison gas. The end of the war brought some disillusionment, but not only with the rationale of war, but also with science and its alleged role in promoting social progress. So here, what he's saying is that the spirit of science conveying social progress, this was shattered during World War I. Because on one hand, we thought that science equated social progress, but here science could also produce such destructive elements like machine guns and all these mass-produced explosives. So how could science then be indicative of social progress? So this brought some disillusionment, not only with the rationale of war, but also with science. Although some questioned the connection between science and progress, others capitalized on the relationship. In the struggle between civilizations, one could argue that scientists have shown themselves to play a crucial role. After World War I, science advocates increasingly demanded more financial support for science and recognition of scientists. In Britain, university researchers, industrial scientists, and government technicians banded together to form the National Union of Scientific Workers in 1918. This union insisted that social progress owed a great debt to scientists. The prestige and compensation ought to reflect their important role. The solidarity among scientists consolidated science not merely as a community of intellectuals, but also as a profession. So, World War I brought some disillusionment, and people started questioning the connection between science and progress. But there were others who now argued that scientists could show that they played a crucial role. And therefore, after World War I, they demanded more financial support. And in Britain, one National Union of Scientific Workers was established. And this rather kind of, it carried the opinion that the social progress owed a lot to scientists. And therefore, whatever their prestige or their compensation should be, that should reflect the role. And solidarity among science consolidated not merely. So science was now not just a community of intellectuals, but it could be regarded as a profession also. So these 3 passages talk about what role science has played in social progress since the age of Enlightenment, and there was a disruption in that idea after World War I. However, scientists and other people, they reinforce the idea that science equates truly to social progress, and therefore scientists should be recognized, and therefore this particular So science then became not just a profession, but also a community of intellectuals. Evolutionary ideas shaped thinking about possibility of social progress. One of the reasons for the pervasive belief in Lamarckian evolution at the expense of Darwinian natural selection was Jean-Baptiste Lamarck's emphasis on willful evolution. Because Lamarck believed that evolutionary change occurred through the action or inaction of the organisms, his ideas resonated with social progressives wishing to change society for the better. Now, here, let's understand what is the relevance of this guy Lamarck. So, if we have already done a few passages, and we already know that we know that Darwinian natural selection, that the traits that are necessary for survival and the traits that uh, are there in the fittest of people, they get passed on in the species. Fittest of the species, they get passed on, and therefore the species survive. So natural selection is that by natural selection, whatever helps species survive, that is passed on. Those genes are passed on to the next generation. Whereas this guy Lamarck, he had challenged this natural selection, and he said that the evolution happened not because of any kind of natural selection, but because of action or inaction of the organism. So if you want, if you want a certain characteristics to come, then it will evolve. Okay, so if let's say a giraffe wanted a longer neck to eat all of those plants at a great height, then he will get that giraffe, they will get that longer neck. Whereas as per Darwinian natural selection, giraffe gets longer neck because it competed with all other animals, and therefore this was a trait where which helped the giraffe to survive the competition, and therefore that gene get passed on. So as per Lamarck, the genes do not get passed on like that. It is a willful evolution. So if Lamarck's views then resonated with these people who, or rather these social progressive, who said that as society wishes to change for better, therefore it will find various ways. So evolutionary ideas shape thinking about possibility of science, social progress. If species evolved in a progressive way, perhaps society as a whole could also do so well. If Lamarck's views are invalid, efforts to ensure civilization's progress through educational, political, and social reforms would fail. So the social progressives made the statement that if Lamarck's views were invalid, that means whichever way the evolution is happening, that is for the better, okay, or that is for in a progressive way. So if this is invalid, then ensuring civilization progress through all of these reforms will fail. Therefore, this paragraph lays out how Lamarck's views resonated with the social progressives. In the US, scientists actually actively promoted their role in social progress. MIT President Carl wrote that human comfort and social progress could no longer be maintained by natural acquisitiveness, such as expansion or conquering territory. Instead, intensive scientific research was required to make the wisest use of existing resources. So here in America, so scientists promoted their role in social progress. They said that progress cannot come by acquiring countries or expanding or conquering territories. We need intensive scientific research to make the wisest use of existing resources. World War II saw renewed appeals to connect science to social progress. Ellen Gregg of Rockefeller Foundation warned in 1944 that unless Americans were willing to support research in all fields, the US would lose its strength. American way of living, processed food, transportation, national defense depended on technology. Social progress was increasingly being defined by changes in technology, many of which could not be predicted prior to development. Craig argued that most progressive societies had to support fundamental research in such fields as medicine, chemistry, physics, and a host of other the US expected to ensure its progress. So here in the last paragraph, he said how the US scientists have been promoting their role in social progress, and how as a society, it has been said that America needs to support research in all the areas if it wants to progress. And progress doesn't come by acquiring or expanding or conquering territory. So this passage basically talks about science, the way the role it has played in the social progress, how that role has been viewed by at different times by different people, and in the end, it talks about how America views it. So, not a difficult passage, easy passage to read. Let's go to the questions. Lamarckian views on evolution had a particular resonance with social progressives because of none of the following reasons except. So none of the following reasons except means because of which reason? So because of which reason Lamarckian views on evolution had a resonance with social progressive. So both agreed that evolution happens willfully, which means Lamarck and evolution happens for the progress or for the betterment, or that's a linear thing, right? The progressives also think that because of the reforms in the society, the progress happens because the society wills itself to reform and progress. Whereas Lamarckian views also are the same. So let's look at which option conveys this. The views supported a deterministic outlook on evolutionary change. Deterministic outlook, तो ऐसा तो कहीं पे भी नहीं बताया गया है. Deterministic outlook, which means, so what is deterministic? It basically means that believing that everything that happens must happen as it does and could not have happened any other way. Okay, deterministic means something like a destiny. Okay, that you don't have any role in it. It is all laid out in the destiny or laid out by destiny. जैसे हम कहते हैं ना कि किस्मत में ये लिखा है, हम तो कुछ नहीं कर सकते. We are victims of our destiny, which means we are prisoners of our destiny. That means ऊपर से लिखा के लाए. तो such a view is called deterministic outlook. तो वैसा व्यू थोड़ी है. यहाँ तो ये बोल रहे हैं दोनों, और लमार्क कह रहा है कि willful है हमारा जो evolutionary change है. Willful, if we will or if we wish, then it will happen. So this is totally opposite of this deterministic outlook. So this is wrong. The views advocated for role of environmental factors in shaping traits. Environmental factors कहाँ आ गए इसमें? There is nothing being discussed about environmental factors. The views emphasize the agency of organisms in their own evolution. Agency means control. Okay, so agency of organisms in their own evolution. So yes, Lamarck says that if the organism wishes or wills, then it can evolve, right? So Lamarck believed that evolutionary change occurred through the action or inaction of the organisms. His ideas resonated with social progressive wishing to change society for better. So this looks fine. The view suggested random chance-based process. बिल्कुल गलत. It is upon the wishes or the will of the individual. All right. So easy question. What implication does the formation of National Union of Scientific Workers carry for the perception of science in post-World War I Britain? It advocates for increased financial backing for scientific research. So implication, okay, this is the implication. This is not a request. This is the requirement. This is not an implication that if you want to, so we need more money, we need more financial backing. This is a requirement. This is not really the implication. So this is the easy eliminate. It signifies an effort to recalibrate societal value attributed to scientific endeavors. Okay, so we have seen that after Enlightenment until World War I, science was equated with social progress. And then people started doubting it because of World War I. So now there was an effort that was needed to recalibrate societal value. That means, so although some question, others capitalized on the capitalist in the struggle between civilization, one could argue scientists have shown themselves to play a crucial role. So after World War I, they advocated increasingly demanded more support for science and recognition of scientists. So basically, there was an effort to recalibrate the societal value. So society should consider science as the key for social progress, which was shaky or which people had started to doubt after World War I. So there was an effort to recalibrate. So we can keep this. This is a good option. We'll keep it. It acknowledges science as a bona fide profession and not as an intellectual pursuit, not an intellectual pursuit. Now, we would read here, the solidarity among scientists consolidated science not merely as a community of intellectuals, but also as a profession. So community of intellectual here means bona fide profession. Sorry, profession is bona fide profession and community of intellectual is intellectual pursuit. Now, this option looks very on a superficial level or on a high level, this looks very attractive. In fact, I was caught between these two. I said, or the way I thought, it acknowledges science as a bona fide profession, intellectual pursuit. दोनों दिया हुआ है कि साइंस का जो इमेज है वो साइंस इज नॉट जस्ट अ कम्युनिटी ऑफ इंडिविजुअल बट ऑल्सो एज अ प्रोफेशन. यहाँ पे भी लिखा हुआ है कि साइंस सिर्फ एक प्रोफेशन नहीं है, इंटेलेक्चुअल परस्यूट भी है, और ये भी है कि रिकैलिब्रेट करने की कोशिश की जा रही है. So let me first rule out 4. It represents a call to capitalize on catastrophe. ये बिल्कुल ही गलत है. This is easy eliminate. So 2 और 3 में you need to spend 30 seconds before I realized that इसमें एक जिसको कहते हैं पीठ पे छुरा बकना, backstabbing. Okay, there's something called as a cheap trick, as we saw yesterday also in when we were discussing AIMCAT 2404. So you see, you can call it cheap trick or you may call it whatever, but it really is something which you need to read. You need to be very careful, otherwise you might miss it. It acknowledges science as a bona fide profession and not an intellectual pursuit. Suppose यहाँ पे लिखा होता, it acknowledges science not just as a, so it is not just A but also B. So if we see the original paragraph here, it is not merely, means not just A but also B. So both. Whereas here is saying it is A but not B and not this. So this is the distortion, this is the twist. And if we read it in a little bit of a hurry, we might miss it, as I had also missed it in the first reading. It is not just A but also B. की जगह उसने लिखा है कि it is A but not B. Okay, so this is wrong, and the correct answer is 1. This had me fooled for a little while because I was kind of really looking at both very carefully कि ये भी लग रहा है, ये है recalibrate, क्योंकि वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 के बाद में उनकी हालत साइंटिस्ट की थोड़ी सी शेकी हो गई थी, एंड पीपल वर डाउटिंग कि क्या साइंस रियली में सोशल प्रोग्रेस दिखा रहा है. बट देन by forming this they again emphasize the role of science and scientists. So recalibration चल रहा है societal value का, तो ये तो correct है. Now इसमें therefore we had this small distortion. You may call it very clever or shrewd or ingenious also. You may call it backstabbing, whatever you want to call it, but we should be able to read it. All right, so interesting. Second question was the answer. Which of the following, if true, would cast the most doubt on Alan Gregg's assertions mentioned in the last paragraph? अब Alan Gregg क्या कह रहे हैं यहाँ पे, देखते हैं. So Alan Gregg of Rockefeller Foundation warned in 1944 that unless Americans were willing to support research in all fields, US would lose its strength. So we need to support research in all the areas. Okay, and social progress was being defined by changes in technology, many of which would not be predicted prior to development. Most progressive society had to support fundamental research. So Gregg कह रहे हैं कि अमेरिका की सोसाइटी को प्रोग्रेस करना है तो we should be doing a lot of research in all areas. Question asks you, which of the following, if true, would cast the most doubt on Alan Gregg's assertions? तो कैसे डाउट पैदा करें? Suppose how can we now create? So ये जो डाउट वाले क्वेश्चन होते हैं, वीकनिंग वाले क्वेश्चन होते हैं, इसमें थोड़ा सा प्री थिंकिंग एट टाइम्स हेल्प्स. प्री थिंकिंग मीन्स जस्ट थिंक बिफोर रीडिंग द ऑप्शंस that how could you weaken this. So if somebody is correlating scientific progress with research, then we need to, let's say, if we are able to find another factor that no, not scientific research but something else leads to social progress, then that could be the answer. That is one way to look at it, right? So let's try to search for such option. Public opinion surveys indicate that majority of Americans no longer view the American way of life as embodying social progress. So whether Americans view American way of life as embodying social progress or not, that is irrelevant here. Okay, this doesn't cast any doubt on Gregg's assertions, because Gregg's assertions are, if you want to progress, then you should use scientific research. Historical analysis reveals that America's social advancements in the early 20th century were primarily driven by military interventions rather than scientific research. Now, this one gives you an alternate reason that America's advancements in early 20th century were driven by military interventions rather than scientific research. So this could be a good option because it gives you an alternative कि जो scientific research नहीं है, जो progress हुई है वो military intervention से हुई है. So we can keep this. Philanthropic contributions to research activities such as those by Rockefeller Foundation have experienced a significant decline. That's okay, it is immaterial. Philanthropic contributions भले ही कम हो गए, उससे कोई इस चीज का लिंक नहीं है. A recent study demonstrated that primary driver of societal advancement in America is economic policy, not diversified scientific research. Now, this also gives you another alternative, isn't it? एक स्टडी ने बताया है कि primary driver of societal advancement is economic policy and not diversified scientific research. Now we have got two options. So this again became a little bit of a tough nut to crack, because in one option he says that जो social progress का कारण है वो military intervention है, scientific research नहीं है, and this is about America's social advancements in early 20th century. दूसरा कह रहा है कि recent study में कहा जा रहा है कि अमेरिका की इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी से सोशल एडवांसमेंट हो रहा है, सोसाइटल एडवांसमेंट हो रहा है, नॉट डाइवर्स साइंटिफिक रिसर्च, डाइवर्सिफाइड. तो क्या करें? ओके, नाउ लेट्स लुक एट द क्वेश्चन, लुक एट द पैसेज. सो ही वॉन्ड इन 1944. तो सबसे पहले तो क्या 1944 को हम अर्ली 20th सेंचुरी बोल सकते हैं? अर्ली 20th सेंचुरी 1910, 20, इवन 30 तक आ गया, बट 1944 इज मिड 20th century, isn't it? Mid 20th century हो गया ना 44 में. तो historical analysis reveals that America's social developments in early 20th century were driven by military, whereas this particular, now this guy says that that unless Americans are willing to support US would lose its strength. American way of living dependent largely, social progress was increasingly, many of which could not be most progressive had to support. This is looking expected to ensure its progress. Host of, if America expected to ensure its progress, मतलब आगे जाके भी. So he's making a forward-looking statement, not a historical or looking back. So second says, fourth says, recent history demonstrates that primary driver of society is economic. Now recent कब की recent है ये? Okay, now so see, I had a doubt with or I had an issue with this option also, that social advancement is early 20th century. 1944 is not early 20th century. Okay, whereas here he says recent studies. Now, is how recent it is? Now, this guy made a prediction, or he made this statement in 1944. Was he looking as far ahead as 2023 or 20? I doubt that also. So recent है, कितनी recent study है, and primary driver of societal advancement is America's economic policy. कब से? Has been. Can we say? Suppose here written here has been since World War II. The primary driver of social advancement has been economic policy, not diversified scientific research. Suppose यहाँ पे has been लिख देता है, तो ये ऑप्शन ज्यादा जस्टिफाइड होता है. ये इज लिखने से गड़बड़ है थोड़ी सी, बिकॉज रीसेंट स्टडी डेमोन्स्ट्रेट दैट प्राइमरी ड्राइवर इज. तो ये आज हो सकता है कि जब एलन ग्रेग ने कहा और उसके बीच में और अभी तक लेके नहीं हो. सो दिस ऑप्शन इज ऑल्सो नॉट अ वेरी गुड ऑप्शन, एंड दिस ऑप्शन इज ऑल्सो नॉट अ वेरी गुड ऑप्शन. करेक्ट आंसर गिवन हियर इज एनीवे फोर्थ, which I given between 4 and 2, I may choose 4, but that also I would choose reluctantly, because I consider this also the wrong option. Okay, यहाँ पे has been उसको लिखना चाहिए था, और recent कब से कब की है ये बताना चाहिए था. He can't just say that primary driver is. Maybe this is currently, it is not from 1944, because we are talking about 1944 onwards. Okay, now we are in 2023. Can we early 20th century? तो 1920 वगैरह तक हो गया. ठीक है, तो चलो ये तो ठीक है, जस्टिफाइड नहीं है. बट क्या फोर्थ जस्टिफाइड है? सो आई हैव माय डाउट्स. सो बट एनीवे, विद अ पिंच ऑफ सॉल्ट वी विल मूव अहेड. आई हैव ऑलरेडी गिवन यू माय पर्सपेक्टिव. So if you had marked 4, you got the answer correct. Otherwise, not a very good question in terms of these options. Okay, he could have made this option a little better by writing at least has been, or I don't know, he might say that I wanted to confuse people. But that's not a wise thing to say, or that's not a logical thing, that you want to confuse, therefore you will use a wrong tense and you will present it in a wrong way. Okay, you should not do that. Each of the following can be inferred from the passage except. So which cannot be inferred? Right? Science during Enlightenment was mainly focused on developing technologies on societal advancement. Mainly focused. देखते हैं. तो science क्या कर रहा था? Science carried the connotation of social progress. As early as Enlightenment, philosophers, economists, and political thinkers sought to naturalize their theories and make them rational. Social reformers sometimes sought to remove traditional forms of power, such as political authority, instead build a society on scientific principles. So, but does it mean that it was mainly focused on developing technologies? ऐसा तो कुछ नहीं बोल रहा है, developing technologies for society. This is the wrong thing to say. So, this could be the answer. We'll keep it. Philosophers during the Enlightenment era were inspired by rational principles. ये तो बताया इसने कि rational principle like scientific thought. So this is given. The advent of destructive technology led to some disillusionment. Yes, यहाँ पे disillusionment हो गया इनको. Okay, it brought some disillusionment. So this can be inferred. Termination of World War I prompted some to reevaluate the contribution. Yes, यहाँ पे भी reevaluate करने की बात चल रही है, right? They wanted to reevaluate. So this is also given. The correct answer is 1 here. Nothing has been given here. Mainly focused on developing technology. All right, let's move to the second passage now. When we teach philosophy, we address some of the deepest questions about reality and life. And when these questions engage our interest, we have every reason to try to answer them. It is true that our answers will originate in our heads and that writing them out is therefore theoretically superfluous. But it is also true that in real world, both memory and mental computing power soon run out. So, ये कह रहा है जब हम philosophy पढ़ाते हैं तो हम deepest questions about reality of life address करते हैं और ये क्वेश्चन जब हमारा इंटरेस्ट एंगेज करते हैं then we have every reason to try to answer. So when we are thinking about these questions and our attention is gathered on them, we will try to answer them. It is true that answer will originate. अब आंसर जो है हमारे हेड में ओरिजिनेट होंगे एंड उसको लिखने से क्या इट इज सुपरफिशियल सुपरफ्लुअस, मतलब कोई जरूरत नहीं है उसको लिखने की. But it is also true that in real world, both memory and mental computing power soon run out. जो हमारे thoughts emerge हो रहे हैं, author is trying to suggest that we should write them. Though it might seem superfluous means redundant, but what is the need of writing it? But the answer to that is because memory or computing power जो है वो limited है mental. So we cannot keep those ideas in our heads. Therefore, we should write them. Written word is useful because it preserves complex thought sequences for further examination. And written philosophy is no exception. Also and separately, when we think on paper or the screen, our thoughts record themselves. Thus, when we are drawn into the questions that define our field, developing our answers in writing is often a natural way of scratching an itch. So, हमारे जो thoughts हैं, इसको आगे के लिए preserve कर लेते हैं if we write them. And so, when we think on paper, that means when we, while thinking, when we keep writing, then our thoughts are recording themselves. And then we are drawn into those, when we are drawn into those questions, then developing our answers writing is like a natural way of scratching an itch. So जो हमारे दिमाग में आ रहा है, it's like a itch which is happening. So when we write that means we are scratching the itch. So in this first paragraph, the author is trying to suggest that whenever these deeper questions come into our mind, we should keep writing them because our mental bandwidth is limited. And also when we need to reflect on those, we can come back to them. And so it's like if you have some thoughts and you're writing, so you're scratching an itch. So that's a natural process, or that's a natural thing. When I supervise graduate students, I often emphasize that order of discovery is one thing and order of exposition another. So discovery जिस तरीके से thought की कर रहे हो आप, वो एक चीज है, और exposition means how you are exposing them to others, how you are writing them for the benefit of others. That's a different thing. To work up an idea for publication, we must eliminate initially promising lines of requirement that do not pan out. Must subordinate material that turns out to be relevant but not essential, and must bring to light enough of our hidden assumptions to allow the argument to spool out smoothly. So, see, this paragraph was about writing your thoughts down, penning your thoughts down. This paragraph it talks about writing for exposition, which means when you are trying to expose your thoughts to others for their reading. So in such a scenario, he's saying that we must eliminate the initial. So whatever thoughts are coming in our mind initially, we need to eliminate them. And whatever is not essential. And we should also bring out our hidden assumptions. No reader needs to retrace all the twists of our winding intellectual journey. So I need to revise and truncate and edit before we expose our work. But given the need to do these things, won't my itch scratching justification fall doubly short? Won't it fail? First, because we usually satisfy our curiosity without having to massage our ideas into journal-friendly form. And second, because we certainly can satisfy it without either subjecting ourselves to the multiple discomforts of manuscript submission or already adding to the already overwhelming pile of forgettable material that a few conscientious souls will eventually feel the need to read. So now he's saying, okay, now we are getting ready for publication of our thoughts. So हमें ये सब चीजें हटा देनी चाहिए, whatever initial thoughts are there. But if we do this, then he's saying that won't the itch scratching means if you have thoughts and you are writing them down, so that justification falls short. क्या ये वो डिफीट नहीं हो जाएगा? तो वो बोल रहा है कि for two reasons, okay, we should address that why it won't fail for two reasons. One is we can usually satisfy a curiosity without having to. So if we have a curiosity, when we write it down, whatever it is, so why do we need to then massage our ideas into general? Massage means to sort them out, to put them in a presentable order, okay, to present it in a way that reader can understand. So जनरल फ्रेंडली फॉर्म में डालने की जरूरत क्या है, ये बोल रहा है. और सेकंड, because we can certainly satisfy it without subjecting ourselves to multiple discomforts of manuscript submission. तो हमारा जो क्यूरियोसिटी है इसको हम सेटिस्फाई वैसे ही कर सकते हैं बिना किसी मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट पे सबमिशन किए, और ऐड कर रहे हैं हम मटेरियल, फॉरगेटेबल मटेरियल, जो कि बहुत ही कम कुछ लोग पढ़ लेंगे या तो. So what he's saying here is that when we are now writing for publication of our ideas, then first of all we should remove all the initial thoughts. Now he's saying कि अगर ऐसा हमने किया तो क्या हमारा itch scratching justification fall short नहीं करेगा? For two reasons. One is कि जब हमें सिर्फ अपने thoughts से curiosity satisfy करनी है, तो फिर क्या जरूरत है हमें इसको एक जर्नल फ्रेंडली फॉर्म में बना के देने की? और दूसरा कि जब हम इसको सेटिस्फाई ऐसे ही कर सकते हैं तो फिर क्यों हम मल्टीपल डिस्कम्फर्ट सहन करें? मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट सबमिशन करना है, ऑलरेडी ऐड करना है फॉरगेटेबल मटेरियल जिसको शायद कुछ लोग पढ़ लें, राइट? सो व्हाई शुड वी डू ऑल ऑफ दिस, इज सेइंग, right? So in the first paragraph he's suggesting that whenever thoughts come to your mind you should write it down. That will be good then, because it's like scratching an itch. But in the second paragraph now he's saying that when we are writing for publication, then we should eliminate all our initial ideas, irrelevant ideas. But in doing so will we not be defeating our purpose of scratching the itch for two reasons. One is कि आपकी क्यूरियोसिटी वैसे ही सेटिस्फाई हो जाएगी जो आपके थॉट्स लिख रहे हो, तो फिर उसको क्या जरूरत है? प्रेजेंट इन अ वे दैट पीपल, और अ पब्लिकेशन फ्रेंडली फॉर्म, जर्नल फ्रेंडली फॉर्म. और सेकंड की वो ऐसे ही जब सेटिस्फाई हो रही है तो व्हाई डू वी नीड टू get into the pain of manuscript submission and add to the overwhelming pile of already the material which is there. तो ऐसा क्यों करें? These questions obviously have some force, but I think they leave my central point intact. One thing that gives us a reason to press on past the rough draft stage is that all the pruning, reordering, and amplification that follows is itself part of working out one's argument. Until we see the argument in a polished enough form to convince others, we can't be completely convinced of it by ourselves. So he's saying that ये जो questions हैं, इस क्वेश्चन को हम आंसर कर सकते हैं विदाउट अफेक्टिंग द सेंट्रल पॉइंट. सो व्हाट इज दैट? कि जब हम व्हेन वी हैव अ रीजन टू पुश आवर रफ ड्राफ्ट to the publication stage, then what we are doing is we are pruning it, okay, editing it, refining it. We are working out one's agreement, and unless we have the argument in a polished form which can convince others, we will ourselves not be completely convinced. मतलब हमें अपने आप को ही कन्विंस करने के लिए उसको उस फॉर्म में लाना पड़ेगा, रिफाइन करके, एडिट करके, पॉलिश करके, जो कि एक पब्लिकेशन के फॉर्म में होता है. So that's why it will leave its central point intact. Thus, the same curiosity that got us started will often give us a reason to amend, edit, polish and expose our work to them. Right? So same curiosity जो है, अभी वो curiosity हमारी satisfy जो बोल रहा था हो गई है, वो नहीं है. वही curiosity हमें lead करेगी कि हम इन सब चीजों को कर दें. Moreover, and quite apart from this, once we have thought ourselves far enough into the paper to see its entire trajectory, we naturally acquire an independent interest in seeing how it will be received. And then once we have come to this stage, and we have seen ourselves far enough into this to see its trajectory in this paper, then we also develop interest in कि कैसे इसको लोग receive करेंगे, how will it be looked at or viewed. Here then is one way to justify publishing even philosophical essays that we don't expect to make a lasting impression, to see them not as original or enduring contributions to human thought, but simply as marking the successful culmination of a characteristically human intellectual activity that we have good personal reasons to undertake. So you can look at it as not something that will make its mark on humanity, or it will be something that will make a very lasting impression, but it is something that is a culmination or the end result. Culmination means end result. So it is the end result of a characteristically human intellectual activity which we had good reason to undertake. Right? So author here in this paragraph, if we just in this passage, let's just sum it up. Author कह रहा है कि हमें कुछ भी जो हमारा philosophical thought दिमाग में आते हैं वो हमें लिखने चाहिए. लिखने से we get a it's like scratching an itch. Whatever comes to our mind, we write it, because mental bandwidth हमारी कम है. These ideas cannot remain in our head, and when we want to explore them for further examination, तो इसके लिए ये काफी help करता है. Now, जब हम इसको present कर रहे हैं in the form for publication, so why is it that we should do it? And author says that if we are doing it, then we should remove or eliminate all the irrelevant points and all the initial line of thought, and we should present only the final whatever thought process. So why should we do that? What is the reason? He's saying that am I not defeating my own purpose? Because मेरी जो क्यूरियोसिटी थी वो सेटिस्फाई हो गई लिखने से, जो मेरे आइडियाज थे मैंने लिख लिए पेपर पे, उससे तो होना चाहिए मेरी क्यूरियोसिटी सेटिस्फाई. देन व्हाई डू वी नीड टू रियली इसको प्रेजेंट इट इन अ जर्नल फ्रेंडली फॉर्म? और दूसरा, why should we add to the already existing piles of forgettable material? तो ये दो है. तो एक ऑथर कह रहा है नहीं, तो ये दोनों क्वेश्चन है तो ठीक है, फोर्सफुल, बट वी कैन डेफिनेटली आंसर देम विदाउट अफेक्टिंग द सेंट्रल पॉइंट. एंड दैट आंसर इज दैट जब हम उसको प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं जर्नल के फॉर्म में पब्लिश करने के लिए, तो वी आर रिफाइनिंग इट, एडिटिंग इट, एंड pruning it, and therefore we are trying to make that argument more coherent, more logical. And unless we do that, unless we make that argument in such a way that we can convince others, we will not be ourselves convinced of it. And therefore the same curiosity that got us started will help us in trying to amend this. और दूसरा, एक बार हमने जब इतना आगे बढ़ गए हैं, उसकी ट्रेजेक्टरी फॉलो कर रहे हैं, then we would also we kind of develop an interest कि इसको किस तरीके से लोग व्यू करते हैं. And therefore, this is there's one way to justify the philosophical essays. हमें कोई एक्सप्रेशन, लास्टिंग इंप्रेशन नहीं बनाना है, और ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि हमारा ऐसे कोई अर्थ शैटरिंग होने वाला है, but it is just that it is a final result of something that is a characteristic human intellectual activity that we have undertaken. All right, so let's look at the questions now. Which of the following best describes the main argument of the passage? Writing and publishing in philosophy serves to clarify complex thoughts and fulfill personal curiosity, even if the work doesn't have enduring significance. Fine. So writing and publishing in philosophy जो है हमारे complex thoughts को clarify करता है. We amend, edit, prune, refine our arguments so as to present it or convince the reader, and therefore it definitely helps to clarify complex thoughts and fulfill personal curiosity. And the work may not have an enduring significance. This is okay, we'll keep it. Writing in philosophy primarily functions to document intricate ideas, ensuring they are preserved for future contemplation and personal satisfaction. Now, this could be also something we can shortlist. We'll keep it in. Philosophy's written form aids memory and mental computation, and publishing allows for sharing and validation of ideas with a very lasting impact. ये तो यही गलत हो गया. Okay, because he says that it may not have a lasting impact. Okay, don't expect to make a lasting impact. So ये यही गलत हो गया, बाकी की चीजें छोड़ दो. The revision and publication process in philosophy is crucial for refining thoughts, which however is not valued much by graduates. ये is not valued much, ये गलत है. There is nothing like that has been given here. So now we are left with 1 and 2. So writing and publishing in philosophy, writing in philosophy functions to document intricate ideas, clarify complex thoughts. ठीक है, ये दोनों यहाँ तक तो ठीक है. Fulfill personal curiosity, fine. Even if the work doesn't have enduring significance. Ensuring they are preserved for future contemplation, ये नहीं कहीं पे भी mentioned है. ये जो future contemplation वाली बात थी, वो तो यहाँ पे थी कि जब हम उसको अपने लिए लिख रहे हैं, तो we can come back to it. Further examination, complex. The written word is useful because it preserves complex thought process for further examination, and written philosophy is no exception. So, लेकिन ये जो यहाँ पे लिखा है इसने कि हम लिख रहे हैं, ये इसको फिलोसफी में एसेज जैसे फॉर्म में छपा दिया हमने, इसको हमने पब्लिकेशन में छपा दिया, जर्नल में छपा दिया, तो ये इंश्योर नहीं कर रहे हम that they are preserved for future contemplation. This is not the central idea of it. Okay, why we are writing personal curiosity here, we have that itch. Okay, we want to explore some ideas. It is not that we want to ensure that they are preserved for future contemplation. So this is wrong here, and therefore this is not a correct answer. A is the right answer. Based on the passage, how does the author view the relationship between the process of writing and personal curiosity in philosophy? Process of writing and personal curiosity. Writing is reluctantly essential. ये तो बिल्कुल गलत है. Writing naturally leads, or curiosity then leads to writing. When you are curious, you start thinking about deeper questions, and you start then contemplating, and then you start writing. So curiosity leads to writing and not the other way around. Curiosity both initiates and improves writing. Yes, so curiosity will initiate your writing and also will help you improve it. This looks okay. A balance between writing and curiosity. See, he is not saying that you can be curious but you should not write, or you should write but not be curious. There is nothing like the balance, or one is more, the other is less. Or you should, if you are curious, then you will not be able to write, or if you are writing, you will not be curious. ऐसा कुछ ट्रेड ऑफ नहीं है उसमें, तो बैलेंस के तो कोई सवाल ही नहीं आता. तो दिस इज रॉन्ग. Third is the right answer. The author would likely recommend philosophy students each of the following concerning the writing process, except revise extensively for clarity. ओके, उसको रिव्यू करना पड़ेगा, रिवाइज करना पड़ेगा. तो ये तो लिखा हुआ है यहाँ पे, राइट? प्रूनिंग, रीऑर्डरिंग, एम्पलीफिकेशन, अमेंड, एडिट, पॉलिश, ये सब तो करना पड़ेगा. सो दिस इज गिवन. रिटेन ऑल इनिशियली प्रॉमिसिंग आइडियाज, नो, ये तो बिल्कुल गलत है. ये देखिए आप, we must eliminate initially promising lines of argument that do not pan out. लिखा हुआ सर. इनफैक्ट जो प्रीवियस वाला था, रिवाइज एक्सटेंसिवली, ये यहाँ से भी आ जाएगा. वी नीड टू रिवाइज एंड ट्रंकेट एंड एडिट बिफोर वी एक्सपोज आवर वर्क. ओके, सो वहां से भी आ जाएगा, वहां से भी आ जाएगा. एंड दिस इज नॉट रिकमेंडेड. डिस्टिंग्विश डिस्कवरी फ्रॉम एक्सपोजिशन. यस, ये तो बोल रहा है. Order of discovery is one thing and order of exposition another. So this is given. Clarify underlying assumptions, given. Okay, we must bring to light enough of our hidden assumptions, given. Correct answer is 2. Until we see the argument in a polished enough form to convince others, we can't be completely convinced by it ourselves. Which one of the following is not an implication of the sentence? Not an implication. Okay. The process of refining an argument helps in solidifying one's own belief. Yes. So unless polished form enough to convince, we can't be convinced of it ourselves. Right. So this is given. Convincing oneself the argument is prerequisite to convincing. Yes. Unless we are able to convince ourselves, how can we convince others? The clarity of an argument is as important for the writer as for the audience. Yes. A polished argument guarantees, this is the wrong word to use. Nothing can guarantee anything. Nothing can guarantee anything. Therefore, this is the correct answer. So, easy questions. If you look at 7th and 8th questions, these are very easy. Okay, you can get them within a jiffy. In fact, half a minute each question should have been given. इसमें ये वाला 6th question also was easy. Only maybe in the 5th question, you may have been in a little bit of a bind between 1 and 2. आपको 1 और 2 में थोड़ा सा डायलेमा हो रहा होगा, जो कि मुझे भी हुआ था, और मुझे कहीं लेवल पे ये भी थोड़ा ठीक लग रहा था. लेकिन थोड़ा सा डीपर घुसने से इसके क्लैरिफाइंग, डॉक्यूमेंटिंग, इंटरप्रेट के बजाय क्लैरिफाइंग इज बेटर. ओके, बिकॉज दिस इज जस्ट अबाउट डॉक्यूमेंटिंग. डॉक्यूमेंटिंग ही करना हमारा पर्पज नहीं है, उसको क्लैरिफाई भी करना है, उसको रिफाइन भी करना है. और दूसरा, वर्क डजंट हैव टू बी एंड्योरिंग. ये भी एक इसमें इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट था. तो ये इसलिए करके सेकंड को एलिमिनेट किया. तो इसमें 5th क्वेश्चन ओनली वाज वर्थ अ लिटिल बिट ऑफ टाइम. रेस्ट ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस आर वर वेरी इजी. इनफैक्ट ये पैसेज करने में आपको मेरे ख्याल से 6 मिनट से ज्यादा नहीं लगने चाहिए, 6-7 मिनट से. ऑलराइट, लेट्स गो टू द नेक्स्ट वन. Arrow's theorem relies on 4 key conditions: unrestricted domain, non-dictatorship, Pareto efficiency, and independence of irrelevant alternatives, IIA. The unrestricted domain condition means that social welfare function should be able to handle any sets of individual preferences. So just hang on, let me see whether some part of the passage is missing or it's correct. Let me just check once again. So just hang on. Okay, so I think there was one paragraph that I missed copying. So now it's been done. Okay, so Kenneth Arrow's impossibility theorem, a pillar of neoclassical economic theory, argues that under certain seemingly reasonable conditions, no social welfare function can adequately represent the preferences of society's members. A social welfare function is a mathematical formula that combines individual preferences in some manner to reflect societal preferences. So there is this impossibility theorem given by Kenneth Arrow that says that there is no way that the individual preferences can be combined to reflect societal preferences. Okay, so let's say there are 10 individuals in a society. So if there are some preferences of those individuals, can they be combined in some manner to reflect societal preference? So he's saying it is impossible. Okay, it's not possible. So under certain seemingly reasonable conditions, no social welfare function can represent. Okay, so what are those conditions? Under those certain seemingly reasonable conditions, under certain conditions, what are those conditions? There are 4 conditions. Unrestricted domain, non-dictatorship, Pareto efficiency. So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. Independence of irrelevant alternatives. The unrestricted domain condition means that social welfare function should be able to handle any set of individual preferences. So any set of preferences should be able, there should be no restriction on any kind of preferences. That is 1. Second, non-dictatorship means that no single individual's preference should dictate the group's preference. So that means it's not as if one individual of a group is more important than the other, and therefore the person's in preference weighs over the others. That won't happen. Pareto means that if every individual prefers one option over another, the group preference should also reflect that. So this means that if everyone prefers something, then group should also reflect. And the final condition, IIA, means that group's preference between 2 options should not be influenced by changes in availability of other options. So these are 4 conditions under which he says it is impossible that a group's preference or a society's preference can reflect individual preferences. Arrow's impossibility theorem posits that no social welfare function can meet all of these 4 conditions at the same time. This suggests that creating a perfect method of aggregating individual preferences to form a collective decision is impossible. However, the validity of Arrow's theorem is contested due to strictness of conditions it imposes, particularly the IIA condition. So, Arrow says that no social welfare function can meet all of these 4 conditions at the same time, and therefore, creating a perfect method of aggregating individual preferences is impossible. However, now the author says that validity is contested because of strictness of the condition, particularly IIA. Some economists have likened the IIA assumption to choosing amongst flavors of ice cream. Whether I prefer chocolate to vanilla should not depend upon whether strawberry is available, or so it is argued. The ice cream metaphor is a poor one, however, given the trivial nature of the alternatives. So let's break down the IIA assumption with another more appropriate example. So he's saying that this IIA assumption or condition, which says that if you prefer A over B, then it should be irrespective of what other options are available. So let's say if I choose A over B, or A to B, sorry, if I prefer A to B, then irrespective of whether C is available or D is available or E is available, this should not really matter. I will always prefer A to B. Okay, so that is what is IIA, and which is, as per the author, strict. And then he says that there is a metaphor that whether you prefer chocolate to vanilla is irrespective of whether strawberry is available or not. So author is of the view that is a poor metaphor because trivial nature of alternative. So let's take a more appropriate example. Suppose you are torn between going out to a party tonight and staying home to study for an exam. At face value, partying appears to be more enjoyable option. However, a third option, getting into a good college, may depend on your decision. Clearly, this third choice, the future consequence, ranks higher among your preferred alternatives than the immediate option to party. This is despite the fact that partying, when taken independently of future consequences, seem to be the preferred choice over studying. So here he is giving another example that suppose there is an option of going to party or studying. It seems that most of us would choose, which is a more enjoyable option, that is partying tonight. But let's say the third option is there, which is getting into a good college. It may depend upon your decision. So obviously, this third choice will definitely influence your choice of party over study. Right? Clearly, this third choice ranks higher among your preferred alternative than the immediate option. So which means that you are basically violating this condition. because this condition says that if you are choosing one alternative over the other, it should be irrespective of the options available, right? So when taken independently of future consequences, then it seems to be a preferred choice. So future consequences are not being looked at in this IIA condition. That is the author's issue with IIA condition, right? In IIA condition, you are not looking at future consequences of those preferences. Herein lies the problem with Arrow's impossibility theorem. It overlooks long-term consequences and focuses too much on immediate gratification. This is troubling because of today's welfare analysis, including cost-benefit analysis, is based at least indirectly on Arrow's theorem, leading economic theory broadly and public policy specifically to take a short-sighted approach. तो ये कह रहा है कि अब प्रॉब्लम यही है कि इसमें हम लॉन्ग टर्म कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस निग्लेक्ट कर देते हैं और इमीडिएट ग्रेटिफिकेशन की बात करते हैं. एंड much of today's welfare analysis is basically this only, cost benefit analysis based on very short-sighted approach. Ironically, rejecting the use of any social welfare function at all, as some libertarians do, also implies rejecting the market process, which itself is guided by social welfare function of sorts. तो आपने अब ये एक आयरनी बता रहा है कि जो लिबर्टेरियंस है, लिबरल इकोनॉमिक्स वाले जो लोग हैं, वो अगर सोशल वेलफेयर फंक्शन को रिजेक्ट कर देते हैं, then they are in a way rejecting the market process, because market process itself is guided by social welfare function. Okay, तो आपने ए को अगर आपने रिजेक्ट किया तो आपने बी को भी रिजेक्ट किया, जबकि बी जो है वो ए से ही गाइडेड है. That's what he's saying. So this is the irony. Arrow himself acknowledges as much in his book that presents the impossibility theorem, social choice and individual values, when he concludes that market mechanism does not create a rational social choice. Strangely, most libertarians have failed to heed the lesson. So ये चीजें ये एरो ने अपनी खुद की बुक में लिखी हुई है, social choice and individual values, that market mechanism does not create a rational social choice. So basically, this passage talks about the Arrow's impossibility theorem, which says that under certain reasonable conditions, no social welfare function can adequately represent the preferences of individuals. And what are those four conditions? One is unrestricted, second is non-dictatorship, third is Pareto. So ये चलो तीन तो ठीक है, लेकिन चौथा जो है इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ इररिलेवेंट अल्टरनेटिव्स, चौथा जो है ये काफी शॉर्ट साइटेड है, इन द सेंस दैट इट टेक्स ओनली द immediate thing into account. So इसलिए ये इतना valid नहीं है, and therefore this impossibility theorem में there are certain holes. And also the problem with this is that if let's say as some libertarians do, they reject the use of social welfare norms or functions, then they are rejecting the market process itself, because that itself is based on social welfare function. All right, let's look at the questions. Which of the following keywords best describe the argument of the passage? Arrow's theorem, Arrow's impossibility, Arrow's impossibility, Arrow's theorem. So which is a better way to represent it? Obviously, impossibility theorem. So we have eliminated these two and we are keeping these two. IIA condition तो होना जरूरी है, तो वो इसमें भी है, इसमें भी है, इसमें भी है, लेकिन इसमें तो है ही नहीं. So in any case, this has been checked out. Now, IIA condition, future consequences, welfare analysis, social welfare function, IIA assumption, short-sighted approach. So अब यहाँ देखते हैं impossibility theorem हो गया, फिर social welfare, no social welfare can meet all of these at the same time. Then IIA assumption हो गया कि IIA is particularly difficult or strict, and it is a short-sighted approach because you are not taking care of long-term consequences. तो future consequences तो इसमें आ गया, लेकिन ये end में जो welfare analysis आ गया यहाँ पे, this welfare analysis, okay, there is no welfare analysis. ये welfare function लिखा हुआ है यहाँ पे, लेकिन welfare analysis जैसा कुछ दिख नहीं रहा है इसमें, तो इसलिए ये second नहीं है, third is the correct answer here. Okay, second and third were very close, I would say, but one is that the sequence also is better presented in third, because it says or is impossibility, then social welfare function, and then IIA. So these are all important points here. These are all important arguments. And then in the end, short-sighted approach. All right. Which of the following option best captures the author's main reservation regarding Arrow's impossibility theorem? So author का main reservation क्या है? Now, Let's try to understand it. So let's look at the first option. It overlooks future outcomes and implications of decisions. Yes, यहाँ पे कह रहा है कि future outlook. Herein lies a problem with Arrow's impossibility theorem. It overlooks long-term consequences and focuses too much on immediate gratification. So it overlooks future outcomes and implications of decision. We can keep this. It represents economic errors in the golden age. ये गलत. Libertarians use it to reject social welfare functions. ये बिल्कुल ही गलत. The excessive rigidity of its conditions, particularly IIA. अब ये यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है, right? ये यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है. However, the validity of Arrow's theorem is contested due to strictness of the conditions it imposes, particularly the IIA condition. और यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है the excessive rigidity of its conditions, particularly IIA. Now, is it the main reservation? See, author's main reservation. Author's reservation can be said to be this: creating a perfect method is impossible. However, validity is contested due to strictness. Herein lies the problem with Arrow's impossibility theorem. Now, this is more specific. It overlooks long-term consequences. So, while this seems to be okay, the excessive rigidity of its conditions, particularly IIA. So this would be a little limited in its view, excessive rigidity, particularly IIA. So that's not the, okay, so that's, yes, it is definitely a point which has been mentioned here. Validity is contested due to strictness of conditions particularly. But then when we try to elaborate what is this challenge that is posed by this IIA condition, then these two unfolds in these two paragraphs, and then herein lies the problem with this. It overlooks long-term consequences. So this is so A is a better answer than fourth. Fourth is, I would say, a little narrow in its application. Main reservation is not excessive rigidity, and then again, let's say in this question there is another challenge in this option, that excessive rigidity. What kind of rigidity? See, what kind of? So unless, okay, suppose this option A was not given here, then fourth was okay. In absence of A, fourth was okay. But then what kind of rigidity? Okay, and what is the implication of that rigidity? That is not given in this. So it overlooks future outcomes and implications of decisions. This definitely gives you a more pointed answer to this main reservation thing. That's why one was correct. So a little difficult here, because obviously one was, see, this also was a little more challenging because you could be confused between 2 and 3. And in this one might be confused between 1 and 4. Ironically, rejecting the use of any social welfare function, as some libertarians do, implies rejecting the market process, which itself is guided by a social welfare function. Which of the following best captures? There's an irony in the libertarian stance, as they resist social welfare function but fail to recognize the inherent paradox of rejecting a market system. Fail to recognize the inherent paradox of rejecting a market system that functions similarly. ये बिल्कुल distorted है. This may look correct to some of you, but then it is totally distorted. Fail to recognize the paradox of rejecting a market system. That this is a, first of all, this is a problem. Paradox of rejecting, and second, that functions similarly. Similar to what? It doesn't function. See, here the point is that you are rejecting social use of social welfare function, but that itself is based upon market process, right? So which also, because if you are rejecting social welfare, you are rejecting market process, but then that market process itself is guided by social welfare function. And obviously any libertarian or any liberal economics fellow will not reject the market process. He will definitely embrace the market process, because market process is what he believes in. So this is totally wrong, this A option. The contradiction is evident, as libertarians who champion social welfare ironically reject the concept of social welfare functions, of which market is an example. Market is not an example of a social welfare function. So this is wrong. The inherent irony lies in the fact that libertarians, while actively rejecting social welfare functions, seem to be oblivious to the intricacies of the market process. while actively rejecting seem to be oblivious of the intricacies of market process. This is wrong. Correct answer is fourth. In disapproving of social welfare functions, they are paradoxically disapproving of the market process, which they likely endorse. Yes. तो आपने इसको अगर डिसअप्रूव किया तो एक तरह से आपने मार्केट प्रोसेस को डिसअप्रूव कर दिया, जबकि आप इसको एंडोर्स करते हो, राइट? बिकॉज सो ए को आपने अगर किया तो ए इज द बेस ऑफ बी, बट बी इन एनी केस यू एक्सेप्ट, यू एंडोर्स बी. तो इस तरह से ये आयरनी. तो फोर्थ इज द राइट आंसर. Author uses the example of choosing between going to a party and studying to illustrate a flaw in Arrow's impossibility theorem. Which of the following best highlights the potential limitation? तो ये जो एग्जाम्पल दिया था पार्टिंग और स्टडिंग का, इसकी हमें लिमिटेशन बतानी है. The author does not consider that individual preferences can change over time and may be influenced by future consequences. See, यहाँ पे future की बात नहीं हुई है उसकी. Future in the sense that you have to take a decision right now, okay, between going out to a party tonight and staying home. So it's not as if this decision you can postpone it or look at this decision in future. ऐसा नहीं बोल रहा है. Okay. So author it does not. So this is not a flaw. Okay. That does not consider the individual preference can change over time and may be influenced by future consequences. He is not looking at it like that. That way anything can change. Okay. That way anything will change and anything can be influenced by something else. So here he is talking about a moment in time. So at this moment, if there is an option of going to a party or studying at home, and you are choosing to party, then you are ignoring the potential or future consequences. If you have future consequences in mind as an option, then you may not go to party, you may stay at home. But then this doesn't mean that this will change over time and therefore this is a limitation. So this is wrong. The author fails to acknowledge that personal decisions such as attending a party or studying might not always align with societal preferences. Personal decision might not align with society. This is irrelevant here. This is not at all potential limitation. This is totally irrelevant. The example does not account for the possibility that some individuals might actually prefer studying over attending a party regardless of future. See, some individuals, he is not talking about, one or two, because here we have to come at a societal preference. And as we know, societal preference is the sum total of all the individual preferences. So author is not going to look at the possibility of some individual preferring to do A, some individual preferring to do B and all that. So this is not a limitation. The author does not consider the importance of long-term consequences. Consider that importance of long-term consequences may already be embedded in individuals' immediate preferences. तो ये चीज ऑथर ने कंसीडर की है. दिस डेफिनेटली कैन बी लुक्ड एट एज अ लिमिटेशन. मतलब आपने अगर सपोज करो कि आप पार्टी जाना है कि घर पे स्टडी करना है, सपोज लॉन्ग टर्म कॉन्सिक्वेंस की यू हैव टू गेट इनटू अ गुड कॉलेज. नाउ लेट्स से कि आप पार्टी में जाने का डिसाइड करते हो, तो मे बी दैट यू हैव ऑलरेडी फैक्टर्ड इन दैट लॉन्ग टर्म कॉन्सिक्वेंस ऑल्सो. यू हैव ऑलरेडी डिसाइडेड दैट वन डे अ वीक आई विल गो आउट एंड पार्टी, and maybe that day is that day itself. So you have not considered the possibility that that particular long-term consequences can be embedded in that individual's immediate preferences also. So this definitely gives you a limitation. So fourth is the right answer. All right, so let's take a look at the VA part. Now, VA part this time had a surprise. There were 2 questions each of para odd one out, para jumbles, para completion, and para summary. So let's take a look at this odd one out. This underrepresentation in AI innovation matters. A concerning trend in the gendered nature of AI and robotic services suggests that women will be disproportionately affected by automation. A report published by UNESCO found that only 12% of AI researchers and 6% of professional software developers are women. So obviously this passage talks about the underrepresentation of women in AI and technology field. Without diverse perspective and ideas, we risk developing new technologies that do not meet the needs of half the population. Despite advances that have been made in women's participation in technology, education, and innovation, women remain underrepresented in the IT and IT-based. So basically, this passage is about how women are underrepresented in IT. So this talks about that. Without diverse perspectives, we risk developing new technologies that do not meet. So this is also about underrepresentation. This also is about underrepresentation. This also is about under. What about second? Concerning trend is the gendered nature of AI in robotic service, suggesting women will be disproportionately affected by automation, further reinforcing gender stereotypes and inequality. Now, this is a different thought. Though you can say in some way it is connected, but it is not really connected directly to these four sentences, because these four sentences talk about the underrepresentation of women in technology sector, especially AI. Whereas this particular trend is how that will be, how that will reinforce gender stereotyping and inequality in workforce. So this is a different thought altogether, right? So, and how will this passage flow? We will start with 5. Despite advances that have been made, women remain underrepresented. A report published by UNESCO found only 12% of AI researchers and 6% of professional software developers were women. This underrepresentation matters. Why does it matter? Because without diverse perspective, we risk developing new technologies that do not meet our needs. So 5314 becomes the order, and 2 is actually the odd one out. Although caricatures are often gross distortions. Caricature मतलब जो कार्टून बनाते हैं, जो हमने कार्टून देखे हैं कि जो स्ट्रिप्स होती है कार्टून, तो किसी भी महापुरुष की, किसी भी पॉलिटिशियन के, ऐसे अलग अलग किसी भी कैरेक्टर के कार्टून बनते हैं. दे आर ग्रॉस डिस्टॉर्शंस. तो उसमें कभी उसकी नाक लंबी कर देंगे, कभी उसकी आंख बड़ी कर देंगे, कभी कान बड़े कर देंगे. So they are gross distortion of faces. They frequently appear to be super portraits capable of eliciting recognition better than veridical depictions. तो ये कह रहा है कि कैरिकेचर जो होते हैं ये डिस्टॉर्शन होते हैं, लेकिन फिर भी ये ज्यादा आसानी से पहचाने में आते हैं. They elicit recognition better than actual depiction. Veridical means जो उसकी real photo है. This may occur because faces are encoded as distinctive features, as distinctive feature deviations from a prototype. तो फेसेस जो होते हैं हमारे किसी के भी, तो डिस्टिंक्टिव फीचर डिविएशंस होते हैं किसी भी प्रोटोटाइप से. तो कोई भी एक नॉर्मल इंसान है, उसकी फोटो है, उससे जो डिफरेंसेस होंगे वही एनकोड होंगे फेस में. द एग्जैजरेशन ऑफ दीज डिविएशंस इन अ कैरिकेचर may enhance recognition because it emphasizes the features of the face that are encoded. तो जो features of the face encoded है ये उसी को exaggerate करता है. In an experiment, faces in the caricatures were tachistoscopically, आज पहली बार ही सुना मैंने word, appearing rapidly. At least he had the graciousness to give the meaning of the word. So their caricatures were tachistoscopically presented in a sequential, same different reaction time task. Subjects were slower to distinguish the stimuli when the face preceded its caricature, indicating that caricatures are more similar to the encoded representation, that are stimuli in which the distinctive features are de-emphasized. So, यहाँ पे एक एक्सपेरिमेंट हुआ जिसमें फेसेस और उनके कैरिकेचर्स एक के बाद एक प्रेजेंट हुए, ओके, इन अ सीक्वेंशियल सेम और डिफरेंट रिएक्शन टाइम टास्क. तो उनको डिस्टिंग्विश करना था जब पहले फेस आया और फिर कैरिकेचर आया. ओके, तो जब पहले फेस आया और फिर कैरिकेचर आया तो वो पहचानने में उनको थोड़ी देर लगी, बजाय इसके कि सीधा कैरिकेचर आ गया. ओके, तो कैरिकेचर्स आर मोर सिमिलर टू द एनकोडेड रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ अ फेस देन द स्टिमुलाई in which distinctive features are de-emphasized. Right? So ये basically पैसेज का क्रक्स सिर्फ ये है कि जो कैरिकेचर्स या जो कार्टून में जो फेसेस बनते हैं वो ज्यादा आसानी से रिकॉग्नाइज होते हैं कंपेयर टू द एक्चुअल फोटो. Caricatures, even with their significant distortions, frequently aid in better facial recognition than accurate depictions, owing to the emphasis on distinctive facial features. This looks perfectly fine. We'll keep it. Exaggerated facial features in caricatures enhance vision. ये क्या बोल रहा है यार, ये तो distortion of the highest order कर दिया. Enhance vision मतलब इससे आपको दिखने में अच्छा हो जाता है. So this is a totally illogical and absurd kind of an option that they enhance vision more accurately than this. So this is out. इसको तो यहीं पे बाहर कर दो. Recognition, they enhance recognition लिखा होता तो हम उसको consider कर लेते. तो vision और recognition में जमीन आसमान का फर्क होता है. Caricatures, by emphasizing the unique traits of a face, often result in quicker recognition than realistic depictions, despite their distorted nature. तो ये जो despite दिखा हुआ है, there किसके लिए है? Distorted nature is of the realistic depictions or it is of the caricatures. So if you are, let's say this is a modifier, and if you want to modify caricatures, and you are placing this modifier at the end, which is next to this realistic depictions, so this is a very, very wrong sentence. Okay, this is also a big distortion. Caricatures, despite their सी सपोज इसको ऐसा लिखना था, caricature despite their distorted nature often result in quicker recognition than realistic depictions by emphasizing the unique traits of it, something like that. If इसको उठा के उन्होंने यहाँ पे लगाया था इसके पास में, तो ये करेक्ट हो सकता है. Although caricatures are distorted, they tend to be more recognizable than accurate depictions as they exaggerate the distinct features encoded या decoded in facial recognition. So this is again a distortion here. Correct answer is 1. In recent years, there has been a surge in the acclaim for electric vehicles as a greener alternative to traditional gasoline-powered cars, with the potential to mitigate environmental damage. However, emerging research has shed light on a hidden environmental cost associated with EVs stemming from their tires. So अब हमें सबको पता है कि इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स के acclaim मीन्स काफी उसको प्रेज मिलती है, तारीफें होती हैं उसकी, इट्स अ ग्रीनर ऑल्टरनेटिव एंड इससे एनवायरमेंटल डैमेज मिटिगेट होगा, कम हो जाएगा. लेकिन रिसर्च क्या कहती है कि इससे भी एनवायरमेंटल कॉस्ट बहुत हाईली एसोसिएटेड है बिकॉज ऑफ देयर टायर्स. इसके टायर्स बड़े एनवायरमेंटली they incur environmental cost. Specialists have raised concern that tires are components frequently overlooked in environmental discussions are a significant source of chemical and microplastic pollution. Specifically, tires from electric vehicles have been identified have particularly problematic, producing up to 20% more pollution than a major contributor to this increased pollution is the intrinsic characteristics of EVs. They are generally heavier and faster acceleration leads to greater release of tiny. तो यहाँ बोल रहा है कि हमने काफी we obviously give a big credit of reducing environmental impact to EVs. However, we forget that their tires are a very heavy polluter compared almost 20% more compared to those on gasoline vehicles. And therefore, and why is that so? That is also given here. So just let's look at the options. EV tires produce up to 20% more pollutants than those of gasoline vehicles due to their weight and acceleration. While this sentence is true, but it does not bring out the main idea behind this, that despite being highly acclaimed for reducing environmental damage, they are in fact incurring pollution in a different way by way of their tires. तो ऐसा करके इसमें कहीं नहीं आया. Electric vehicles are generally heavier and accelerate faster than gasoline vehicles, impacting tire wear. Again, this doesn't mention the environmental impact part. Pollution from electric vehicles is an overlooked environmental issue contributing to chemical and microplastic pollution. This is okay still, but pollution from electric vehicles in what sense? Pollution or by tires. Okay, from electric vehicle tires. Specifically tires की बात हुई ना यहाँ पे, तो यहाँ पे इसमें दिया ही नहीं है कुछ tires के बारे में. The acclaim for electric vehicles as a greener alternative overlooks the significant pollution caused by the tires. Correct. Each and every word of this can be justified. Significant pollution and 20% more. And the acclaim is overlooked. So, 4th was the right answer. All right, another odd one out. Certain themes recur, us versus them, thinking that fuels stereotypical humor's ability to make it. Okay. Over the last few years, spread of hateful ideas has been amplified, especially through humorous forms of communication. What does it take to create genuinely subversive humorous cultural artifacts as opposed to reinforcing the status quo? Participation in racist humor is not necessarily restricted to people who identify with any political affiliation. The ambivalence and ambiguity allow it to tread where explicit hate speech cannot. So, this passage is about how the hateful ideas are spread through humorous forms of communication. So, ambivalence and ambiguity of humor, allows it to tread where explicit hate. ये तो है इसमें included. Participation in racist humor is not necessarily restricted to people who identify. It allows it to tread where explicit. Okay, so actually fourth and fifth sentences are linked. What does it take to create genuinely subversive, humorous cultural artifacts as opposed to reinforcing the status quo? So cultural artifacts, this looks like a suspicious thing here. Over the last few years, spread of hateful ideas has been amplified through humorous forms of communication. Certain themes recur, us versus them, thinking that fuels stereotypical humor, humor's ability to make humor pleasurable, hatred pleasurable, humor as a mechanism for race-based solidarity, and most fittingly, humor as a mechanism through which violence is reduced to a laughing matter. Okay, so this sentence, last few years spread through humorous forms. So 2 and 1 seem to be connected. 4 and 5 seem to be connected. 3 looks to be the odd one out because it talks about some cultural artifacts, genuinely subversive, as opposed to reinforcing the status quo. So therefore, 3 is a different idea. The rest of these 4 sentences talk about hate being spread through humorous forms of communication and not being restricted to any politics or something, but wherever explicit hate speeches cannot go, or they are not allowed, there this form of communication can go. So good question. Third is the odd one out. It also considers problem at the intersection of sexuality and law and develops reforms to correct gender injustice, exploitation, and restriction. Dependent sentence. To these ends, dependent sentence, feminist philosophy of law applies insights. Feminist philosophy of law identifies the pervasive influence of patriarchy. So independent sentence. Contemporary feminist philosophy of law also draws. So very clearly, 3 से ही start करना पड़ेगा. There is no other way. Then where do we go? So feminist philosophy of law identifies the pervasive influence of patriarchy and masculinist norms on legal structures and demonstrate their effect on material conditions of women and girls and those who may not conform to cisgender norms. All right, so ये feminist philosophy of law के बारे में हमें कुछ बता रहा है. तो अब the next question that comes to mind is this it also considers problems. So this relates to contemporary feminist law of philosophy of law or third. So see 1, so 3 हो गया हमारा. Now whether this 1 it refers to what is given in 3 or it refers to what is given in 4. So it could be 3, 4, 1, let's say hypothetically, or it could be 3, 1. And then to these ends, now these ends are specifically this, okay, developing reforms to correct gender injustice, exploitation of restriction. यही है. So to these ends, feminist philosophy of law applies insights from feminist epistemology, relational metaphysics and blah blah. तो ये 2 जो है ये 1 के बाद में आएगा ही आएगा. तो या तो ये हो सकता है और या फिर ये हो सकता है. So let's evaluate which is a better option. Feminist philosophy identifies this. Contemporary feminist philosophy also draws from diverse scholarly perspectives. It also considers problems at the intersection and to these ends. So this looks a little. So feminist philosophy, then also and also. So ये थोड़ा सा कि feminist philosophy, then contemporary. See, doesn't really, because to these ends, feminist philosophy of law applies insights. So first we talk about this feminist law, finish that thought and idea, and then we go to contemporary feminist philosophy of law also draws from diverse scholarly experiences. ये एक थोड़ा अलग idea है, ये बीच में नहीं आएगा. This will come in the end. So 3, 1, 2, 4 is a better option here. Difficult था, very very difficult question. And sometimes it is advised not to spend too much time on this and mark whatever you want and move on. This is not a difficult question at all. Could it be possible? शुरू में तो नहीं आएगा. So seasonal trend, so dependent है. The arrival of Halloween brings with it not just trick or treating and spooky decoration, but also a surge in horror film screenings across theaters. Independent could be the opening statement. Critics argue that violent films can incite copycat behavior, a claim supported by some psychological studies, but others dismiss these films as completely harmless. So arrival of Halloween, the seasonal trend. So 3 and 2 are a mandatory pair. So arrival of Halloween से trick or treat आता है और horror films आ जाती है. The seasonal trends, horror films का आना triggers a recurring debate about relationship between on-screen violence and real-life aggression. Critics argue, 4 पे चले जाएंगे, violent films can incite copycat behavior. Claims supported by some psychological studies, but others dismiss these as completely harmless. Could it be possible? So now this idea of 1 directly comes from 4. Could it be possible that instead of inciting violence, horror films might actually play a role in preventing it? Right. So this is the end, and we end it here, 3 to 4. All right. The move comes as a part of a broader effort to diversify birding and make it more welcoming of all people of all backgrounds and races. Get ready to say goodbye to a lot of familiar bird names like Anna's hummingbird, Gamble's quail, Lewis's woodpecker, Bebek's Bullock's oriole, and more. The move comes as a part of broader effort to diversify birding and make it welcoming to all people. The American Ornithological Society has vowed to change the English names of all bird species currently named after people, along with any other bird names deemed offensive or exclusionary. The move comes as a part of a broader effort. The move refers to this, it could refer to has vowed to change. Names have power and power can be for good, says Colleen. तो अब अगर आप इसको 3 पे रख देंगे, then it won't come. 3 पे बिल्कुल नहीं आएगा because यहाँ पे she लिखा हुआ है, and that she has to refer to this Colleen. So if you put this sentence in between here 3, then it will violate that pronoun wala thing, and therefore therefore this will definitely not come at 3, and 4 पे आने का तो कोई मतलब ही नहीं है because it's too late for 4. So the only challenge is now whether 1 or 2. Now official answer इसमें 1 दिया हुआ है, which I disagree with to a great extent. As per me, this should have come at 2. Obviously, जिस paragraph से इसने उसको लेके आया वहाँ पे वो 1 पे दिया हुआ. That's why he's marking the answer as 1, and he's giving a very vague justification, which I don't buy. I don't subscribe to it. So get ready to say goodbye. Now the move. See, get ready to say goodbye to a lot. The move comes as a part. I won't connect it better here. I would connect it better in 2. The American Society has vowed to change the English names along with any bird names deemed offensive or exclusionary. The move comes as a part of broader effort to diversify binding and birding and make it more welcoming to. This is a very logical. It could very logically come at 2. Okay, he has given some very vague reason of why it cannot come at 2 and it will come at 1, but I don't agree, and this is why this is not a very good question. A good question in para completion or para jumble would be the one that has got a very clear logic on why it should come at a particular place. Unfortunately, this does not seem to pass that standard. This sentence can very well come at 2 also, could come at 1 also. Now, as it happens, from wherever this fellow has picked it, in that it was put at this place, and therefore he has put it at this place. So 1 was the official answer. I don't agree to it. As per me, 2 is an equally good answer. In fact, it is a little better answer than 1. Let's move. In that way, one person's actions really can change the world for good. For as long as humans have been around, we've been asking us a question about a person's life, how can we best fulfill it? These existential questions seem to be a part of human nature and often drive people to start social innovation projects so that they can leave a meaningful mark. But sometimes it's hard to see what difference one person can make and how we can help our local and global community. Even if you are not trying to solve world hunger or global warming, brainstorming ways to help your community can make a big difference. In that way, so this in what way? In that way, one person's action can really change the world. This looks a little premature here again. When we help others, it doesn't stop with us. Studies have found that when we help others, those around us are more likely to help. The chain reaction है. आपने एक को help किया, उसने दूसरे को help किया, उसने औरों को help किया. This means that the more we give our time and resources on the issue we care about, the more others will give in return. In that way, one person action can really change the world for good. It comes very well in 4th. So here, you might have been inclined to even look at 3. Let's evaluate. Sometimes it's hard to see what difference one person can make and how we can help our global and local communities. Even if you're not trying to solve world hunger, brainstorming ways to help your community can make a big difference. In that way, one person's action can really change the world for good. When we help others, it doesn't stop with us. Studies have found those. This means that more others will give. See, this is not like a preamble. This is like a conclusion. This is not like a statement that will come before the way you describe in what way the world has been changed. Like this one, no. This is what we are doing. So in that way, whatever activities we are doing here, or the way they are influencing other people's, in that way, one person action can change the world for good. This is the conclusion. Concluding sentence. So fourth is the right answer. There is no ambiguity in this question. All right. So I hope this was of some use to you and you were able to understand the passage and questions. Thank you so much.